And Melissa, just for formalities, if you can have you begin your first stating and spelling your first and last name and title, please.
Melissa Nold, Melissa Nold, civil rights attorney, attorney for the family. So this morning at 11, the family met with the interim police chief and the city attorney to watch an edited version of some of the footage that was available. Sort of concerningly, they had us, instead of coming here to this beautiful city hall, they had us meet them at the wastewater treatment, sort of on the edge of town. And so sort of started the day off on sort of the bad foot, I guess you could say. Everybody came in and didn't really tell us anything other than they would only show it to us once. And then they proceeded to show us a video that obviously had been put together most likely by a PR firm, where there were sort of captions explaining what they are saying happened at the time. And then clips of body cameras mixed in with the 911 call, and then some of the in-car camera footage. And it confirmed what the second autopsy reported. It confirmed what all the witnesses reported, that her head was struck on the car after they were trying to force her into the car, and that her head was struck again after the officer dragged her into the car. And then he was shoving her feet were sticking out. He's trying to close the car door with her feet still extended, and she doesn't know, she's face down, no way to correct that herself. And he keeps shoving, and her body forces up forward toward the other side of the car. And then they left her there with their intention to leave her face down. After having struck her head, her own willpower worked her way back up into her seat, even though she was handcuffed, managed to get herself into some of a seating position. And then her medical condition obviously starts to deteriorate. She's sweating. She's not looking well. She seems to be kind of in and out of it. And then Officer Peachman came back and she asked him for water. She needed some water. He told her no, he wasn't going to give her any water, that she'd get that in jail. And he closed the door again on her. And then some minutes later, 10 or 15 minutes later, another officer came over, and they were trying to get her to get out of the car, and she just couldn't. And you could tell that at that point she was in a sort of a disoriented state. She couldn't hold her head up. And they still, the female officer still insisted on keeping her in her handcuffs, if somehow she was considered a flight risk, even though she was obviously medically unwell and she needed to have that, the constriction of the handcuffs removed. And so we didn't see the end of the video. They didn't show us when she was removed from the car, what happened after that. But the last parts that we were able to see is her sort of reaching out to something or to someone kind of over and over. They're just kind of standing there, not providing her aid. They don't get her out of the car to lay her down. You just keep seeing her reaching, like she's trying to get something or go somewhere. And then that's the end of what we saw. We didn't get a chance to see them carry her out of the car, what condition she was in, or how that potentially got worse. But it's exactly what all the witnesses told us. We were able to see all the different components. She was down on the ground on her knees. She struck her head multiple times. There's abusive treatment of her. And so very incredibly difficult day for the family. And wildly unnecessary to make them wait these 5 months to show us something that they've had this whole time. And we strongly believe that the reason why they conceal these videos all of this time is how bad this looks. Even their edited videos of this are just dramatic and sickening, and every possible law enforcement training and procedure, everything was done wrong. Every single thing that you look at, why would you do that? And it was all misstep after misstep. And then after she was obviously medically unwell and they were going to release her, the officer goes back and tries to get her sister to sign a citizen's arrest form, which she said no, because it wasn't what she was trying to get to begin with. She wanted to please kind of diffuse the situation.
Before I forget, when she was finally taken out of the car, police vehicle, what was that location?
So they were still right in front of, they were like 2 houses down from the original location. We didn't see her get out of the car. They didn't show us the footage. The last footages that we could see is when she can't keep her head up. She's obviously not able to help herself get out. And then you see the tow truck drive up, and then the fire ambulance right after the tow truck, and then it kind of cuts off from what we can see. The last thing we see is her reaching.
So just remind me for the timeline. She was then
showed us they did not tell anybody that she had a head injury, which is consistent with what we believed, because when she got to the hospital, they did not know that she had a head injury. The family had to figure that out and kind of backtrack.
So Melissa, tell us what you saw. I mean, we know that the autopsy report, the independent autopsy report, said blunt force trauma to the head. Did you see that happening? Describe where that happened in that video.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what he told us. And we only knew from witnesses that there may have been some contact at the outside the sort of the interior doorway of the car. And so you see her being kind of, looks like propelled forward. The witnesses said they think he was shoving her. You see her head hit sort of the inside of the door, where the V of the door. You hear her hit something, and it's like a loud, something that hits metal. You hear would have been her forehead area hit that. She has some bruising consistent with that. And then once they dragged her into the car face down, when the other officer closes the door. So that's not where the contact came. The contact came when he was shoving the door closed with her legs still sticking out of it, trying to basically push her forward, and you see her body lurch forward into the other door, which is consistent with the injuries that she had here. And then also there was a fracture at the base of her skull, which would be explained by the compression of her head, being shoved into that second door.
This is not a young person. This is talk about the handling of a senior, a 72-year-old woman.
Well, and this was in a situation where she wasn't obviously an elderly person. She had a full head of gray hair. She was, physically appeared to be an elderly person. You're supposed to deal with an elderly person with the understanding that they're fragile, right? And that the force that you would use on somebody who was 30 in great condition is very different than what you would use for a person of that age. To give no consideration to she's down on the ground, they're telling her to get up. She's down on the ground in handcuffs. Like, how is she supposed to propel herself back up onto her feet? There was no consideration for her age. There was no consideration for where they knew at that point you could see the medication thing for her diabetes. There was no consideration for her having medical conditions that were known to them at the time, because it was visible with her short sleeve, shirt on. So it's just the treatment of any elder always has to be with the understanding that the person is more delicate. But this would have been egregious if she'd have been a 30-year-old person, to slam her head on something and not get her medical care and shove the person in to the point that they've struck their head multiple times in one incident, and to not tell medics, to not get her medical care. And then even when she's telling her, I need water, right? That way she's diabetic. I need water. No, you get it when you get to jail. So all of those things together, it was cruel. It was oppressive. It was just one of the worst things I've ever seen, actually worse than what I was expecting to see. We weren't sure how much would actually be documented. Sometimes the body camera is ajar and you can't really see what's going on, but you can see and hear all the physical injuries that are exactly consistent with the second autopsy and all of the witnesses' statements.
What do you want to happen here? What do you think should happen?
I think the officer should be prosecuted. I think that particularly Officer Peachman, who struck her head multiple times, first by force, the second time by a different type of force, by shoving her legs in. If she's laying face down and she's close to the door, what does he think is going to happen to her body when he propels her forward, right? He's going to continue to propel her towards the door. But you see him, he's struggling with the door, he's pushing against her, to get her to. So to me, it's more than sufficient to charge him. This is a homicide. It's been ruled a homicide by the second autopsy, and he can be charged. He can and needs to be charged with that. We also want them to initiate a coroner's inquest. If they didn't do anything that was a homicide, then let a jury of Contra Costa County residents make that determination. And so we're hoping that those two things can happen as soon as possible.
So you had mentioned that there was violation of police code and ethics and whatnot. Can you give us you can explain some, but you're a civil rights attorney. Can you give us some concrete examples of where the officers may not have followed protocol?
Sure. I used to be a police officer, so I actually have done the training. We stay up to speed so that we know when people have made mistakes. So from the very onset, the female officer just had no control of the situation. She was just kind of like, oh no, she wasn't explaining things properly. She wasn't, hey, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And when she's over to the driver's side of her car, instead of saying, Ms. Ramirez, you're not allowed to leave, she goes, oh, she's fleeing. All she would have needed to do was assert herself. She's a police officer too. Ma'am, you're not allowed to leave. We're investigating a crime. You're not free to go. But she didn't. Nobody told, until they were pulling on her arms, nobody even told her that she wasn't free to leave. And so that's where the de-escalation part comes in. You have to give full, clear commands to people of what you expect from them. She's not a police officer. She doesn't know what she's allowed to do or not do until somebody tells her. And so at the offset that, the way that they handcuffed her, they claim that they double locked her handcuffs, but the dig marks in her arms suggest that, that they probably weren't actually properly double locked. Having a person of that age that you're pushing, she was wearing a sandal, like a Birkenstock sort of style. Why would you be pushing a person who's an elderly person, more likely to lose their footing, and so kind of pushing her down, pushing her towards the police car? Those are all things that you wouldn't do procedurally. If you need a person to cooperate, you say, I need you to lift up your right leg and we're going to help you into the car. They didn't do any of that. They decided once after they hit her head and she hit the ground, that somehow she was being combative or uncooperative when she was injured and kind of slumped down onto the ground. And so at every corner, leaving her face down, handcuffed, that is wildly against every sort of police training. There's something called positional asphyxiation that happens if you leave a handcuffed person face down. And so the officers have been trained to not do that since at least 2008. So that's like long-term training that everybody gets because it's dangerous. And so to intend to leave her like that, like I said, she wiggled herself back up into somewhat of a seated position, but to not put her in a safe seated position with a seatbelt on to keep her there was, created the situation where she's having to some degree exhaust herself, right, to try to get herself up so she could have air, to leave her there unattended. And when a person asks you for water, you see a person's drenched in sweat. That car has air conditioning. So in theory, it's cool in the car. If a person is drenched in sweat, that's a medical emergency. When somebody asks you for water, you should be getting them the ambulance. It was another maybe 30 minutes before she got any sort of medical attention. And so like at every opportunity, you also wouldn't, to get a person's legs into a police car, you would get them wiggled just into a seated position. You wouldn't just slam the door until you could manage to just body them across the car. So pretty much every time there was an opportunity to make a decision, they went against long-term training and tactical maneuvers that are in place to keep both the officers and people safe. And had they followed pretty much any of those things, that we believe she'd still be alive today.
I appreciate that. You described a scene that sounds pretty horrific. This is the redacted version.
Yes.
So, what do you think maybe they may have left out? What are any concerns about? It sounds like you have enough to prove what you want with this version, but concerns that this is an edited version and not the full thing. And when you try to get that?
Yeah, and so during litigation, we get everything unredacted end to end. We get every bit of everything. But I think that from the time that she was obviously having severe medical distress, I think the video after that and how they treated her after that and her handling was probably really egregious, because why not show it when you know that there were questions about what was told to the EMTs? Did they lie to the EMTs? Is that what they want to hide? Because when the EMTs come, they're going to go, hey, what's going on? Right? Do they go, we don't know what's going on. She just started becoming unwell. No, you watched her hit her head, right? You didn't report that. Maybe the reason why it was some hours later before she ended up having surgery, right? Had they actually provided that information to the EMTs, it would have potentially been able to save her life at the emergency room stage. And so I think that that's probably something that was left out intentionally.
Are the officers still working, these two?
They were never put on leave. They had these body camera videos. They had all this footage immediately. They said based on the circumstances that they weren't put on leave. But to me, the circumstances warranted them being put on leave until they could be terminated or an extraordinary amount of retraining. Because if you mess up one thing, you're human sometimes. If you messed up at every stage, at every step, every time there's an opportunity to follow protocol, to de-escalate, to provide care, to look out for a person. Once you put a person in handcuffs, they're your responsibility. You can't push a person that's propelling forward. How she can stop that, right? Everything that you do or don't do is on you at that point. And so, it's a wildly disgusting thing that we had to see, today. And so it makes all the sense why they waited all this time to show it, because they knew how bad it looked. Even the redacted copy, even the edited copy makes them look wildly guilty.
Can we get Rudy up here, please? And Rudy, talk about how tough that was. I mean, what do you think of what you just saw?
I realized why they waited so long. If they could have waited longer, they would have done that. It was, like Melissa said, it was horrific. It was damaging to my soul to watch my wife being treated the way she was because she broke a coffee cup. That was, yeah. I mean, they lost control of the situation. It's like Melissa says, maybe some retraining, maybe at the very least take them off duty until this thing is resolved, but no, they never did. They've had another shooting, another killing since my wife's murder happened on Christmas Eve. Another person was shot and killed. They released that footage within a week or two. We're going on 5 months and we barely get ours, and that's only because they ran out of time. They could not delay anymore. If they didn't have to show it, if nobody forced them to, they wouldn't have done it.
Your wife, you said never any problems with the law, any interactions, any arrests. I mean, she was definitely standing her ground. I mean, she believed like this was like crazy, but I mean, and you can tell she has feisty spirit. Talk about that. She's never though been in trouble.
Never. 54 years together with her, never had any interaction with any police, no arguments, nothing other than maybe a traffic stop, but I can't even remember when that may have happened. But no, in the videos you could see her like kidding around with because they were trying to get information from her, and they would say certain things and she would chuckle, and because it was so ludicrous what they were asking. But she was in the right. There was nothing that she did wrong that required a identification other than her name. And a lot of falsehoods being made by her sister, who initiated the whole thing, kept telling us and kept telling news people that she did not want or consider a citizen's arrest. Total lie. It was a lie. They showed us how, yes, she wanted her arrested, and she was saying things that are surprising and a mystification to me, telling the police that her sister had punched her in the mouth. Holy Christ.
But in the end, she said no citizen arrest. I mean, and then she even seemed surprised you were going to arrest her over a coffee cup. I mean,
they were just following their course. They were advising her as they went along, and they told her what was going to happen, but she stepped in a little bit too late. She would not allow her brother to go out to help defend her sister. You could hear him in the background telling him, let me go out, let me be with her. She came to see me. Her sister wouldn't let her go out just to be with her. Reuben, the brother, my wife would take him wherever he needed to go because she enjoyed being with him. That's the only time that she could be with him. And he enjoyed being with her. And she was just going to go and pick him up and take a little ride to go to the doctor to find out when his appointments were to maybe help out. And when my wife, Yolanda, and her brother Reuben had already agreed upon going, and so he was waiting for her, and the sister decided that she was not going to let him go. And that's where it all started, and it got worse from there. And the police officers that were involved in the arrest, detention, whatever the hell they want to call it, they should be fired if nothing else. At least take them off duty until this thing is over and done with, so we can find out for certain. But to have him on duty and the female officer on duty, something's missing, something's wrong here. And then they send us off to some corporation yard where there's garbage trucks here, trucks over there. The water treatment plant is in the back. I'm sure there's plenty of room. There was plenty of room here at City Hall. I'm sure they have conference centers that you can go in. I think they knew and understood that once they showed us that video that there was going to be some outrageous comments being made, probably a lot of profanity, and that's why probably they didn't want us here, because they have just regular citizens coming in and out, and maybe they would have heard the yelling and the screaming. I try to find out how often do they have those kind of meetings and showing of videos in a crime out there in the corporation yard. And of course, everybody, I don't know.
Not respectful.
Not at all.
Rudy, you heard Yolanda saying, call my husband. Call my husband.
Yeah. I mean, that's all she wanted, to get some reassurance, to get some kind of guidance, and I wish that they would have let her so I could have just explained to everybody, I'll be down there right away. And the most outrageous thing is, never once do you hear any police officer stop and say, Mrs. Ramirez, please go home. Please. If they would have just been calm and said to her, ma'am, Mrs. Ramirez, please go home. Go home to your husband. We'll try and straighten this out. Don't come back, because she doesn't want you here. The wife would have left. But nothing like that was done. And they ended up killing her over a broken coffee cup. And
Mr. Ramirez, I appreciate you sharing. Appreciate that. That's a question.
Just
You
go ahead.
have been for months trying to get this video. Now you've seen it. How important is that for you?
Very important. It shows, part of the story. Obviously, it's redacted. They're controlling the narrative. We demanded to see the original raw footage, which they didn't honor. They're putting out their edited, produced, redacted video with context, and of course, they're going to try to, control the narrative there, as you would think. So the next step is to see the raw original video, and that'll be through a different agency.
But how important was it for you guys to see this video? You've been waiting so long.
It was important in the fact that we're getting a lot of our information from eyewitnesses, to see the video, and from what the eyewitnesses, the neighbors had talked about, did match up. Obviously, I thought that all of this occurred in front of my grandmother's residence, but it was a couple houses down. It started at my grandmother's and then ended up a couple down, and just some certain details were, there were some other details in looking at the footage, but it was as troubling as a lot of the witnesses said. This was very troubling for them. And for me to watch that, I saw my mom die twice. I saw her die in back of that police car. And then I was there to witness when she took her last breath 7 days later.
Never should have happened.
Never should have happened. 72 years old, the female officer, Officer Tajia, was doing a in-depth investigation, trying to get my mom's information. Got her name. They say they couldn't run in the system. Well, because she's never been in trouble with the law. So what are they expecting? I mean, you're an officer. You're supposed to assess the situation. If I look at an elderly woman, do I think that she's going to be a felon? And that's where I think my mom was kind of felt like, that they were going a little too far with that, trying to get her birthday. And she does make a comment in there like, oh, you're going to buy me a birthday present. But, this was all unnecessary. As my dad mentioned, they could have just told her to go home. At any point during that whole encounter, they didn't even call my dad or the family or anything. We had to find out from neighbors what had happened, and that's how we found out. But they're in a rush. I don't know if the city's hurting for money. They're in a rush to arrest her and tow the car. And then once they realized that this was serious, they ended up making a detainment. They're like, okay, we're not going to arrest her after all, which is super weird. This has just been a crazy, surreal experience and very unnecessary. These police officers are supposed to serve and protect, enhance the quality of life here. According to the mission statement, they did none of that. Very disturbing.
Now that you've seen the video, and I appreciate you guys sharing, what is the next step in terms of justice for your mom? Now you've seen it firsthand, maybe you'll get an unredacted version. How does this proceed forward? Yeah, there's going to be a couple things. Obviously, we want to see the original raw footage. Also want to see, get a coroner's inquest. We have two differing medical examiner opinions, one from the county, and they got their information trying to protect the local law enforcement, saying that it's natural causes. And then obviously the one that we had through the Colin Kaepernick Foundation, that was an independent investigation, nonprofit. He had a different take. It was homicide.
So two totally different opposite ends of the spectrum. So this is why a coroner's inquest is needed, to have a trial by the jury, present all the facts and to get that out. And obviously there needs to be a type of non-police calls, alternatives for the city. My mom would have probably have benefited off of that rather than having Brentwood Police Department that obviously doesn't know how to de-escalate 70-year-old plus women. To have another alternative for these types of calls, non-threatening calls, should be considered as well.
Was she a threat?
Depends on who you ask. If you're asking the police, obviously they had to handcuff her. They seemed like she was a threat, but it's my mom. She's not a threat. I could see her slam a door, but other than that, she's not a threat.
Is there anything that you would care to say? I don't know. No, this has been really tough. It's up to you. Or if anybody else wanted to say something. Sorry.
I mean,
Can you just step forward?
do you have any specific questions, I guess?
Just, how important, I know this was incredibly difficult. Just share your thoughts on what you just saw and so.
Yeah, it was the most difficult at the end when she was disoriented and you just see her kind of like, I don't know what she was trying to do, if she was trying to contact someone or thinking she's calling somebody, but she's just going like this at the end. And it just
How the officers
that
watching
broke
her.
me. They're just sitting there watching her as she's going like this. Maybe she's thinking she's texting us or calling 911 for herself, but for them to just stare at her for 5+ minutes as she's doing that, it was, again, this is also unreal, and I don't know when our life just moved into an alternate dimension where something like this could happen to my mom. And it was over a coffee cup and her wanting to see her brother and him wanting to see her, but my aunt not letting him come out to see her. Just, it all could have been avoided had she made a call to me, my brothers, or my dad before calling the police. It probably could have been all avoided and she'd still be here with us.
To hear your mom asking for your dad.
Yeah.
These two were inseparable, right?
And then for us to just find out everything third hand, not even from my aunt. Never once have we heard from her at all this whole time. It's just, yeah.
I don't know if this is a tough question to ask, but was it important for you guys to see this video?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. Well, yes, it was important, but I know that I don't know how to. I did not want to watch it because I know that it would just bring everything back after all this time that we've been trying to come to terms with what happened. So it's everything's fresh again, and I think that's the worst part. So it was important for us to see it, but it did not need to take this long because now we're starting our grieving process all over again.
Describe your mom for us.
Well, she liked to have a good time. She liked to have fun and hang out with us and have drinks with me. Me and her like to go to paranormal or go to psychic shows and watch paranormal stuff. And me and her were big into all that type of thing. And now I'm the only one because my dad and brothers that's not their cup of tea. She loved my kids. She loved my other niece and nephew, her grandkids. She had the best laugh. She could start telling you a story and then start laughing and you don't know what she's talking about, but you laugh with her just because her laugh was that infectious.
Miss her so much.
Yeah. I talk to her every day.
What do you want her to know? Are you guys gonna keep fighting? You're gonna
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah. Yeah. That we're fighting and that she needs to watch over us.
And what would you say to those officers?
I don't have words for them. I try to always look for the best in people, and I don't know that there's any in them for what happened. It was all, again, unnecessary. It didn't need to happen to her.
72 years old.
They should be ashamed of themselves. They should not be police officers. They should not be public servants. The community deserves way better than this. 72-year-old woman doesn't make any sense. Like, if you can't de-escalate a 72-year-old woman, shouldn't be a police officer.
So shame on you.
Shame on them.
Mind if I share some words? My name is Hermaine Ambrose, and this is my family. Man, I'm tired of y'all seeing tears. I'm angry. I've been in this community I'm third generation out here. And like they said in the past, there's grandmother's name, mother's name on schools. We have deep roots in this city, you know? And for y'all to bring people, cowboys and rangers to shoot and bang, bang, I'm teaching my kid to put his hands on the freaking dashboard so he doesn't get killed. Now I gotta tell my mom to put her hands on her freaking walking cane so she doesn't get killed? That's bull crap. I'm pissed. This could have been avoided. I've met many of you rangers and you cowboys that run around here at these bars and they want to act all tough. We don't need that. We need community people who are involved with people who give a damn about this city and its people. Not because you want to cover something up because you made a mistake. You made a mistake and fess up to it like you're taught if you had a good mother to teach you right and wrong. You don't go hide it. And if you have a heart, then you need to understand where we come from and where this pain comes from. It's not that I'm just jumping out of my boots to raise ruckus and cause problems and mean mug cops or flip them off or whatever I need to do. It's because y'all did something to our family. We don't get to come home and see her no more smiling and having a good time. You heard the stories, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of dealing with these cowboy outlaws that run around thinking that they could just go over here and bang, bang, and that's not cool. That's not the way we were raised. We were raised to de-escalate. We were raised to have a friendly face, shake a hand, say what's up to a neighbor, come out, barbecue, have a great time. You ask anybody in this community, that's our family, all the time. It's never been, oh, these thugs and this and that. We have elders that did raise us right. So do the right thing and have heart and have compassion. Most of all, you definitely need to have some type of empathy for us. That's it.
What is your name, sir?
Hermaine Ambrose.
Can you spell that, please?
Yes, it's Hermain, last name Ambriz, Ambriz.
Is this your aunt or your?
This is my aunt, my uncle, my cousins.
So sorry. Thank you so much.
One of the common denominators, the city attorney, Katie Winitsky, she's accepting an assistant city attorney position with Pleasanton. We came to find out that that position was made public in November. So that tells you something.
You suggested she's leaving because of this?
I have the feeling in my gut tells me yes. I mean, it's just the whole time and everything. Why would you take a step down in a position? And obviously this incident happened on September 26th. It wasn't until November when the media got a hold of this story and the public did that she ended up applying for a different position.
Maybe last question for Melissa. Now that you guys have seen the video,
I'm sorry. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
My name is Paul Ramirez. Yolanda was my sister-in-law. And I think that the person central to this is Officer Aaron Peachman, who's the president of the Policeman Union Association. And something that we need to be very clear about, this was a assault of a woman, an elderly citizen, with violence. If you take him out of his uniform and you see that anywhere else in our community, that's an abuser. That's domestic violence. And against women, against the elderly grandmother, 72 years old. And the force in terms of, and it seems to be in terms of in the footage, the video, is that all of a sudden he switched. And basically, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you because you're going to jail. And it was as if he was trying to teach her a lesson. And when you think about it, say, why? Why did this happen? I wanted to make a citizen's arrest. No, I didn't. Vandalism. What was the vandalism? She was kicking my door. The impeachment looked at the door. There's no damage. Well, we can't. That's not vandalism. Well, she broke my coffee cup. Impeachment goes, how much is that coffee cup worth? She goes, $12. Kind of, okay, that's what we're going to go with. So an argument between two 70-plus-year-old sisters, elderly citizens, and you get this brute force to be used against a woman? That's the worst man on the face of this earth. To use your physical force to what? Prove a point? To show them that I'm in charge? I control this? Is the biggest violation of a man against a woman and a human being. And there was no cause, as my brother said from the very beginning, there was no need for this. And the horrific period of anguish of 5 months, and that to see an edited version and their narrative. And so again, as I'm saying, I think there's a lot of people that need to answer for this and be held accountable, and transparency needs to be a main point.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Francisco Ramirez. I'm Yolanda's son. The police have put out a statement saying that they followed a protocol. I didn't see none of that in the video. But I'm asking the public for help if they can email the district attorney, DA's office at ContraCostaDA.org, and ask them to initiate a coroner's inquest for my mom and possible criminal prosecution against the police officers, or at least get them off duty. Thank you.
Listen, maybe last question to you. Again, thank you to the family for sharing. Now that you've seen this, you go back to the DA and what do you say to them now?
Where are the charges? And at this point, there's enough evidence. You see them intentionally shove her head strikes, another intentional act to shove her into the car outside of policy where her head is struck again. You're denying her water. You're essentially leaving her in the car to pass away. And so there's sufficient evidence on those body camera videos to support criminal charges. So now it's time for her to do her job, which we know that it's not easy to file charges against police officers. It's very, she faced a recall last time that she filed charges against the police officer, but that officer was convicted and she wasn't recalled. And so there's support for prosecution of police officers in extreme circumstances. And this is one of those extreme circumstances. You have a 72-year-old woman who's physically injured, used force against a person when you shouldn't, and caused them to be deceased. That's what her job is. So we're hoping that she will actually follow the law and charge, because this is one of those unique situations where it's warranted.
And obviously, there's a lawsuit too.
Yeah, there's a federal civil rights lawsuit that's just getting started. We'll have a chance to review all of the footage. Their coroner, who had his odd view of the situation, he'll have to go under oath and acknowledge that he was never told that she had struck her head, that he didn't see camera footage, that he was never told what actually happened leading up to her becoming medically unwell.
So that's been filed? Is the lawsuit?
Yeah, the lawsuit's been filed in the Northern District Federal Court. We filed it on the first of the year. So that'll get rolling. That'll be getting rolling any minute.
Thank you so much.
There was no discussion after watching the video, right? They said, here's the video, thank you, goodbye, that was it. That was it.
That was it. No, he's like, we're only going to play this once. And then he rolled it, and then, then it was over, and there wasn't any more talking, and then kind of escorted us out. So yeah, there wasn't I would have sort of expected, whether it was well received or not, right? I would have expected at least the offer of a condolence, something that you would say to the people, whether you thought your officers were in the wrong or not, somebody has died, right? And there's a family who's been grieving and waiting all of these months, and so there was no address, the lack of humanity, I guess, was shown when they asked us to go to the waste treatment facility, and it sort of, the disrespect just sort of continued without even the offer of any sort of maybe frivolous, but those words surprisingly mean a lot to people when they're actually in the room with you and they don't, and then they get them, and then to not hear them, it's like those were just words. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. It's not admission of anything, right? I've seen shootings where there were terrible circumstances where the chiefs would still offer a condolence. It's such a simple, thing to acknowledge the dignity of just human life that was lost. So we didn't, unfortunately, it cost nothing. It would have, couldn't be used against you, and yet we still couldn't even get in any of it. We couldn't even get the small talk, I guess, way to say it. So.
The cowards, they had extra police officers in there, in the room with their guns, and I was like, firearms are necessary in here? Very troubling, the way they're handling everything.
Well, Melissa and the Ramirez family, guys, thank you for sharing.
Thank you guys.
Story with you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Following it.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
A lot.